Hello and welcome to the Road to the Garden podcast. I'm Matt St. Jean, and today it's Monday of the last week of the regular season. I can't believe that we've already here. It seems like the season just started, and we got this week. We got the Big East tournament, and then we're to the NCAA tournament, and that's it. This is going to come to a close real fast from here. We got a lot of good basketball in between now and then, and a lot of basketball this past weekend to talk about. I got Tommy Godin here with me as always. How you doing, Tommy?
Matt, always a pleasure. Chris, glad to have you on. Michael, thank you for taking the time away from your day to. I know you're busy writing letters to the Patino family, trying to petition come back to the Big East. That takes up a large chunk of your day. I just thank you for carving some out to meet with us here tonight.
Well, I like to think of myself as an excellent multitasker. So while we're filming this, I will be, penning my multiple letters to any person with the last name Patino, including Richard. So
not exclusive.
I suppose that's the vibes for Georgetown and St. John's fans, and if you ask certain Twitter accounts, DePaul fans these days. So that's going after the Patinos there. And Chris obviously coming on. We're going to be talking a lot of Creighton today. How you doing, Chris?
Doing good. I'm happy that my Road to the Garden overlords let me and Michael come on the same podcast for the first time. Happy to talk.
Is this your first time on a podcast together?
First time.
Wow, we're crossing the streams here.
That Chris takes a sip of his seltzer for
really great
for every Spotify listener.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Hey, make sure you subscribe on YouTube. You can see the hijinks. A couple of us have got our drinks here on a Monday night as we're talking about the Big East.
Hydrated. Water.
Yeah. Michael's very hydrated over there. We got a good show for you. I think we're going to be talking a lot about Creighton and Villanova on this one, especially after that game we saw this weekend. Now that we're getting close to the tournaments, we're going to talk about which teams we think can go deep, why we think teams can go deep, what might cause teams to stumble earlier than you may have thought. And we're going to be previewing the Tuesday and Wednesday games this week. 10 games left in the regular season. We got 5 in the next 2 days that we'll be talking about. A lot on tap for you over the next hour or so. Before we get into it, a couple reminders. First, we've teamed up with SeatGeek this season to get you the best deals for tickets to your favorite teams. SeatGeek takes the confusion out of buying tickets, and they're here to give you some great deals. Get in on the fun and head over to SeatGeek, download their app, and use code NCAA Hoops Digest for $20 off your first purchase. And as always, this podcast is presented by House Enterprise and in partnership with House of College Hoops. Head over to our site, house-enterprise.com, for more info. All right. Let's get started with the big story of the weekend. Villanova welcomes Creighton into the Wells Fargo Center, and Eric Dixon puts on a show. I believe it was a career high for him. He really took it to Ryan Kalkbrenner all game long, was knocking down threes. An incredible performance for Villanova, and for Creighton, this is 3 out of 4 that they have lost. They fall out of the AP top 25. Chris, what's going on with the Blue Jays?
Yeah, I was not all that surprised by the Villanova game for a few reasons. One is that Villanova rocks right now. So I think this game was more about Villanova than it is about Creighton, if you ask me. But if you want to talk about the Jays, the first thing you have to talk about is the defensive side of the basketball this year. And one thing I thought both Marquette and Villanova did fantastic against Creighton was pull Kalkbrenner away from the rim, right? So Villanova, with having Justin Moore and Caleb Daniels be able to post up effectively and let Dixon be on the perimeter, opens up a whole lot of things, right? Because Creighton's perimeter defense with Nembhard and Alexander, and to some extent Shireman and Kaluma, it's all about filtering people inside to Kalkbrenner and say, hey, if you want to take it at Kalkbrenner, go ahead. We'll let you. And if Kalkbrenner's not there at that rim, there's no one to filter guys to, right? So then it's just one-on-one in the paint, Nembhard versus Justin Moore or Caleb Daniels, or take your pick, right? And that's just not what Creighton's defense is built for. One quick stat, Creighton 16-1 when they hold teams to 69 points and under, 2-10 with 70 points or over. So, right, it starts with the defensive end, and Creighton the book's kind of starting to get out on them, right? Take Kalkbrenner away from the rim, and there's a lot more openings for opposing offenses.
Michael, are you seeing a lot of the same stuff from Creighton, and are you worried about what this team looks like heading into March at this point?
That breakdown was better than anything I would have said. So the only thing I would, think to add is I think some of their individual defenders are pretty good. Like at times, like just like when Kalum was locked in, Trey Alexander locked in, they're long. They can get you. What the hell are you doing, Tommy?
Keep going.
Okay.
I think he's getting ready for when I ask about Villanova.
But anytime I'm like, damn, Creighton, like they're kind of on a rut. They need a bounce back game. You need a bounce back game. Who do you call? Call Mr. Patrick Ewing over there. He's still there. They get the Hoyas in the whatever their arena's called, like the Chai House Center, whatever. That's exactly what you need. If you're talking bounce back, you play the Hoyas, hit like 17 threes. Yeah, that's all you need. So long term, they'll have a bounce back game. Then we can see how they do in the game after that. But for now, losing 3 of the last 4, that's not good. So win the next one.
The next 2 for Creighton, they get Georgetown and they play DePaul. So pretty easy last week, or at least it should be. We've seen teams at the top stumble at DePaul this year, including Villanova. Tommy, what's your read on the Wildcats right now?
We are back up. Oh my goodness.
You're going to have to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to see what Tommy just did.
Yeah, 100%. Subscribe to the YouTube. But I mean, it's just a shame that it's coming this late in the year. Maybe a little too late, unfortunately. We'll get that out of the way first. But man, I mean, it's almost a complete 180 on the defensive end. Villanova's been stout, especially guarding the perimeter. The 3-point defense has been incredible. Chris Arcidiacono went from playing 35 minutes a game to being a solid 7-8 minute contributor off the bench. That's his role. That's what he does great. His importance, I mean, you look at Creighton and their lack of depth. I mean, they had a guy like Chris Arch, Can't believe I'm saying that. But, I mean, yeah, Villanova winning, playing extremely good basketball. Caleb Daniels had another off game. He wasn't great at Xavier either. And they're still winning. They're still beating these ranked teams. So Jordan Longino is still not 100%, nor is Justin Moore. But, man, things are clicking for the Wildcats right now. McDermott said it the best. This isn't a team I want to see in March.
Do you think this is a team that can get to March? Chris, I know you've been buying on them for the Big East tournament. Before we get to the Big East tournament, do you think they can still get an at-large bid with what they have in front of them?
I think if they went out to the Big East Championship and lose, it would be very hard to leave them out. Make the committee leave that Villanova team, this last 2 weeks version of Villanova, out of the tournament. I mean, I don't know. I think they get in, but regardless, I think they win the Big East tournament. So,
Michael, would you leave Villanova out if they win these next couple coming up?
If I was making the bracket, no. I want better teams in the tournament, but I also would put – you made that Texas A&M case in your article today. That was brilliant. I didn't think of that, but you're completely right. That was a very good case to make because I thought that team should have made the tournament. Granted, the whole committee does the whole games on Sunday don't matter thing, so that probably kind of hurt them. But I don't know. Like, I think at the end of the day, if North Carolina doesn't lose to Florida State tonight, which I really hope they do, that'd be really funny. North Carolina versus Villanova on the bubble is pretty fun. And if poor Charleston goes 30 wins, loses in the conference tournament, they're going to put either UNC or Nova in over them when Charleston is 100% the team that deserves to make the tournament. But I don't know. I'm a little uncertain. It depends on how the rest of the bubble fills out. But just to be different, I'm going to say no. But I think it's a very fun conversation.
Yeah. Tommy, before I come to you, I'll reference what that was in the article for the listeners. Texas A&M last year ended up, I think, getting 22 wins. They won the last 4 or 5 in the regular season, had a bunch of quad 1 wins in there, went to the SEC championship and ended up losing to Tennessee, got a whole bunch of quad 1 wins at the end of the year, and it didn't end up mattering. They went to the NIT, ended up going to the NIT championship where they lost to Xavier. And you look at what Villanova can do, and if they win out, their resume would be almost identical to what Texas A&M had last season.
I mean, you got to go in your rear end and pull whatever Villanova stuck up there out of there, dude. A vendetta against them all week. I don't get it. It's like Chris is the angel on my shoulder. Matt is the devil. No, but in all seriousness, I don't think Villanova makes the tournament if they go to the championship and lose. Matt's point actually was a very good point, all jokes aside. This Seton Hall game tomorrow night, no longer a quad 1 game on the road. They got bumped back to a quad 2 game. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be really tough for Villanova. Do they deserve to be in? I mean, we'll put it this way. The team that's playing right now deserves to be in, but unfortunately, you got to look at the whole body of work, and I don't think that it's going to be good enough to get in.
And that the whole big question around Villanova, and this is the thing Texas A&M didn't have last year, is the injury situation and how much the committee is willing to caveat this. Because at what point was Villanova fully healthy for the first time? It was mid-February?
Yeah, like
whenever Longino came back?
5 games ago. Yeah, the Seton Hall game. Last time they played Seton Hall.
Yeah. So that's pretty late in the season to get fully healthy. You can't discount 3 months of basketball, but you can weigh it less if you think the team's playing better and deserves it. I think part of what will matter for Villanova coming up isn't just winning these games. It's how you win. It's how you perform. If you dominate against some of these teams, you make a much stronger case than if you're just squeaking by.
Yeah, I think there is a case to be made that it's never easy to win the Big East tournament, but it's easier to get in if you win the Big East tournament than it is this at-large chance. I mean, don't even put it in the committee's hand. This team has the talent to win the Big East tournament. I think they can do it. I think that's what the fan base should be focusing on rather than the at-large fairy tale.
Yeah, and I'd be curious to see where they get seated if they win the Big East tournament, because I don't think you can put Villanova on the 11 or 12 line with that resume. I don't know what you do with them. That'd be a very curious case for the committee. I'm glad I'm not the one having to answer that question.
Do you imagine like a 12-5 Nova Xavier game?
It'd be interesting, right? If they're a 12 seed, I mean, shoot, they might be favored in their opening round game, depending on the matchup, which would be, that would be fun.
Yeah, and the flip side is they could. That's one of those where I could see them ending up in the 8-9 game. And would you want to be the 1 seed? First of all, would you want to be the 8 or the 9 seed that has to deal with Nova in the first round? But also, would you want to be the 1 seed that then has to deal with them in the hypothetical where Villanova does essentially win out the rest of the way? It's quite something. Yeah. I do want to – we're going to talk about some of the other results from this weekend. I do want to shift the focus back to Creighton for a second because I know we want to highlight some of the teams at the top of the Big East. This is why we brought Chris on for this episode too. Obviously, Creighton has struggled down the stretch here, but the team was hyped up coming into the season for a reason, and I think has played very well for most of the year. You look at the losses they've had in this stretch, and they include a double overtime loss at Providence and a loss on the final basket against a Marquette team that's going to end up winning the Big East here. So it's not, for the most part, these losses aren't bad ones. The Villanova one's tough, but Creighton has still looked really good. I want to talk about what has the season been like as a Blue Jay fan?
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, right? If you turn the clock back to early December, let's say right after the Vegas trip where they dropped games to BYU and Arizona State, everyone on Twitter and everyone in the media world as well is just writing off Creighton, right? And then to see, the upswing after that and winning the 8 in a row and things like that, it's been wild. Creighton hasn't lost to a non-tournament team since that Vegas trip. So December 12th was their last game that they lost against a non-tournament team. So all of their losses have been fine. We haven't seen them at their best consistently much in the last month, which is a bummer. But this team will be just fine. I would say the biggest takeaway in the past couple of weeks, though, is that teams are starting to kind of figure out ways to attack Creighton. I think the offense will be just fine. They are who they are offensively. They have limitations, but they're a good offensive team. Defensively, we'll see if the trend continues. I'm very curious. Creighton will win the games, but I'm curious how Georgetown and DePaul attack Creighton on the offensive end. So we'll see. But Creighton guys, they're a good team. They'll be just fine. They're a second weekend team at the earliest I foresee them going out is the second weekend.
Well, that's some high praise.
How Georgetown will game plan? You think Patrick Ewing is doing any game planning at this point? Come on, this dude. Come on. It's just give Brandon Murray or Primo the ball and hope it works. That's the offense he's been running for the last season and a half.
Hey, this is his last game he'll ever coach basketball in.
Hey,
outside
of
of
the East tournament still.
When he ruins Villanova's season.
Yeah, that's true. Okay.
Yeah, we could get a Wednesday night Georgetown Villanova game in the Big East tournament, which would be quite something in the house that Patrick Ewing built. That would be quite the narratives going into that one would be fantastic. I don't know if the play on the court would match the narratives there. Because what is it that you think Creighton has done so well this season? I know there was a lot of hype coming into the year. Have they matched that hype, and what is it that has gotten them to their highest heights?
Yeah, they're certainly offensively when their ball movement is still running and they're playing Creighton basketball, right, where they're making the extra pass and getting shooters open. That obviously plays a big factor, but it's also the bench play and also having a healthy roster, right? Over half their losses come with either injured or playing through mono Kalkbrenner. When everyone's healthy and the bench is playing well, Creighton plays well. Crazy how that works, right? But sometimes it's as simple as that. And then on the defensive end, when they're not getting torched on the offensive glass, they tend to play a lot better defensively. So simple things, right? Where it's just it's not massive takeaways from me. It's just do the things that you're supposed to do, and Creighton ends up being pretty good because they're very talented.
Yeah, that starting five is arguably the best starting five in the Big East, I think, outside of what Marquette has had going this year. Both of those groups of five are fantastic, what they can do. Depth, obviously, a concern for Creighton. I know we want to get into some of the strengths and weaknesses, floor and ceiling of some of these tournament teams in a little bit here. I know we'd mentioned Georgetown, so I think this is the time where we talk about the other games that happened this weekend. And we had a couple, three Thursday teams going to win on the road over the weekend. One of them, I think we'll talk about Providence, Georgetown, Michael. 20-point win for the Friars. I think my question for you is, at halftime of that game, what do you think Patrick Ewing was saying to his team and what was likely the last home game he's ever going to coach at Capital One Arena?
Well, guys, you tried. And, good for you. That's probably what that halftime speech was. That's it. That Bryce Hopkins gets in foul trouble. Wasn't he like a -15 for the game overall? And Providence still won by 20. Yeah. Bryce Hopkins didn't play well. And he's like that guy on that team. It just didn't matter. Jared Bynum just was like, I'm coming back home. He ain't stopping me. Good luck. And yeah, he was incredible. He was excellent. That's the Bynum you're looking for if you're a Providence fan coming to the tournament. Patrick Ewing. Good luck. That's it.
Yeah, an unceremonious goodbye there in all likelihood for Georgetown and Patrick Ewing in his last home game. The other teams that we saw pick up wins on the road, Xavier winning at Seton Hall, UConn winning at St. John's. Tommy, I'll come to you here. You can really pick either of these or any of this that we're talking about with the road teams. Do you take anything away from what we saw over the weekend?
Matt, I'm not going to lie to you. The audio just went out. I have no idea what you just said. I heard you say Tommy, and then it was blank after that. So
just guess instead. Just keep talking and guess.
Keep talking and guess. I'm going to guess we're talking about Patrick Ewing, and he's not going to be back. And Michael's happy about it. Georgetown never had a chance.
Is my audio working now?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Okay, perfect. The team's winning on the road this weekend. Xavier wins at Seton Hall. UConn wins at St. John's. Obviously, Providence at Georgetown. You take anything away from those performances that we didn't already know?
That we didn't already know? No. I mean, I was a little surprised. Seton Hall's defensive effort. Xavier hasn't been the Xavier of old, and they put up 82 on Seton Hall. I mean, Xavier's offense is just ridiculous, but Seton Hall's defense, I mean, I just got done talking to Kyle Neptune. He said they're, if not the best, they're one of the best in the conference. So I was a little surprised to see the 80s in the Seton Hall Xavier game, especially at home in the Prudential Center for Hall. UConn putting up 95 points, not surprised. And Marquette and DePaul, no, not surprised there.
Hey, Chris, any takeaways from what you saw this weekend outside of the top game?
Not so much. To piggyback off of Tommy's comment on Seton Hall, I mean, I get that they're like supposedly a really good defense, but when you look at the games they played against the top tier of the Big East, it kind of got torched. Even in non-conference, right? Kansas put up 91 on them.
That Iowa game, I think, was a real wake-up call.
Right, yeah. So I don't know. I'm not completely sold that Seton Hall can do anything on the defensive end that's going to get them multiple wins in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, we haven't seen that defense be the deciding factor really in any game against the top offense all season long.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Just if you can't score, defense doesn't really matter. And when you can't defend also, you're going to get blown out. And, every single time I back Seton Hall in one of those games, I feel like an idiot maybe 2 minutes in. So it's great. Great feeling.
Now, Michael, when my audio was going in and out, we were talking about the Georgetown Providence game a little bit. The first 5-10 minutes of the second half, take me through your emotions there.
Of the second half of that game?
Yeah.
Yeah, very simple. I was watching Rick Pitino play. And I'm watching those guys on Iona. It's like, my God. If any Big East team gets Danis Jenkins, Walter Clayton, and Nelly Jr. Joseph, bro, it's going to be fun taping those guys in the offseason. Those guys can play. And those guys could belong on it. You start those guys over. Rick Pitino would take that team and win more Big East games than Patrick Ewing has, and I don't think anyone's debating that. And if he gets this team, woo! Rick Pitino. That's all that's going through my head at every point. I'm literally in the heart of midterms, and the only thing I can think about is Rick Pitino and how funny it would be to have him in the Big East where he belongs. That's all I can think of.
That's the focus for Georgetown at the moment. I do want to bring up one other thing that I thought was interesting. This Marquette DePaul game this weekend, I don't know how much of that you guys had watched all the way through, because this was a blowout at halftime. Cam Jones came to play. He was hitting shots. DePaul outscored Marquette by double figures in the second half. And it basically took Tyler Kolek being perfect at the free throw line in the final couple minutes. He scored 17 of Marquette's last 20 points at the game. It was all him on offense. And DePaul just, you guys all know the whole thing where the announcers will be like, hey, you don't have to take a three here. You can go for a quick two. DePaul just did that all the way until the game ended and just ran the clock down and ended up losing by 6. So I'm not sure what the strategy was there. Maybe they just knew they weren't going to hit the threes. But DePaul made this a game with Marquette in a way I didn't expect late. But Tyler Kolek puts it away. And I know we kind of talked about it at the end of last week, but I figured we got Chris and Michael on who weren't here last week. Is Tyler Kolek the biggest player of the year in your eyes?
Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, he has to be. He's the best player. He's the most important player on the best team.
No, he's not. No, he's not.
What? Who?
I could name. Okay, if I was naming a roster and picking my team, and we did this on the our draft on this podcast, and Kolek was like a second round pick. I could name 5 players I'd rather have than Tyler Kolek.
Throw Primo Spears on that team, and Primo Spears is a stud. All credit to him. Throw him on that team. Is that team over 500 in the Big East? I would say
yes, over 500. Yes,
no.
over 500.
Bro, the way he runs that offense, he dissects opposing defenses. He's getting guys the ball in the perfect spot. He is like near flawless. I feel like you have to go to him. I don't really know who else you can. Hopkins, maybe number 2.
Hopkins would be my pick.
Now you put Kolek on Georgetown, over 6.5 wins.
Is Patrick Ewing still the coach?
Oh, sure is.
Under. You could give Patrick Ewing, pick the 13 best guys in the conference, give that roster to Patrick Ewing. They're 500 at best.
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up that draft we did the other day, Chris, because my team has a roster transaction. I've officially dropped Joel Soriano, and I've picked up Eric Dixon off waivers. So I'd like to reflect that.
Smart move. Yeah.
Yeah, he was unbelievable. I will I want to ask about defensive player of the year here too, because Ryan Kalkbrenner in that conversation. But before that, I just want to note, I had Bryce Hopkins right at the top of the Big East player of the year race, but I think this week in particular was really tough for him. Getting shut out on the glass against UConn, and then he got 3 fouls in the first 4 minutes of the game against Georgetown and basically just didn't play. So that combined with Tyler Kolek single-handedly essentially winning the 2 games, they're going to make Marquette win the Big East. I don't know if Tyler Kolek's the best player in the conference, but I'd said this before. I don't think you can tell the story of this season without him at the center of it. And I think that's a huge part of what the award is.
If the award just went to the most talented guy every time, it's Cam Whitmore. If we're talking pro prospects, it's Cam Whitmore.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
No. I do want to ask, Chris, what do you think about the Defensive Player of the Year award this year? And is Kalkbrenner going to do it in back-to-back seasons?
I'm not sure if he will do it. I'm sure people will look at this last Villanova game and be like, ha, gotcha. Kalkbrenner's not awesome defensively. And that's not true. He has his flaws, and he's not awesome on the perimeter defensively, but he's a fantastic defender. Anyone that watches a Creighton game can tell you that, right? Like, so much of their entire, right, like I was talking about, so much of their entire defensive scheme is just built around filtering guys to him because he's that good around the rim. He impacts so many shots. So, yeah, I would take Kalkbrenner defensively over everyone.
I like that, Matt. You're gonna like my answer, even though you've been very mean to me and Villanova over these last couple of days. I'm gonna go with a Providence guy. I think Devin Carter, what he does around the perimeter, he's strong as anything, super athletic. If I had to submit a vote right now, I'd submit it for Devin Carter.
That would be number 2.
Yeah, I'd go Kalkbrenner, but I wouldn't. If someone submitted Carter, I wouldn't argue with him. And yeah, it's a good pick too. You can't go wrong with those 2. Anyone else, and there's a battle, but those 2,
yeah,
respect.
Yeah, I think it's really a battle of preferences between the 2 of those guys. Do you prefer a rim protecting center who makes life so much easier for the rest of your defense, or do you prefer a matchup guard who's switchable, who can make life easier on the perimeter? Well, no, Devin Carter is in the top 10 in both blocks per game and steals per game in the conference, which is something Julian Champagny actually did the last couple seasons, which I didn't realize until I was looking that up. But but you wouldn't know Devin Carter is 6'3" when you watch him play. He's a much bigger player on the court. I'll be interested to see how the coaches end up voting on that award. I agree with you guys. I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think you pick either of those guys and you've picked the right guy.
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't be upset if Kalkbrenner got it, but like you said, Matt, it's a thing of preference.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit of tournament stuff here. I want to run through. I got 6 teams here: Marquette, Providence, Xavier, Creighton, UConn, and Villanova with the push that they're making. I just want to briefly go around and kind of ask the general question to everybody. It's a 2-part question. If this team makes a run in the tournament, and we can use either the Big East or NCAA tournaments, I think we're just talking tournament play in general, that kind of environment. How far can they go, and why would they get that far? And if we see them bow out early, what would be the cause of it? What's going to be kind of their undoing? And that can be matchups. It could be anything. Whatever it is, when you look at this team, you evaluate them. And I think we got to start at the top with Marquette being the team that just clinched at least a share of a Big East title. Huge props to Marquette for doing that for the first time. Also, I forgot to mention, they're number 6 in the AP poll today for the first time since 1978. Hugely impressive stuff for that program, what Shaka Smart has done there. I don't know, Tommy, I think we can start with you on this one. The first part of that, how far can Marquette go? And if they reach that, what's going to be the reason why they get there?
Marquette, their ceiling to me is a Final Four team. I think their strength is their balance. They have 10 guys that play more than 8 minutes a game, 4 double-figure scorers, and I think Tyler Kolek is just their safety net out of the round of 32. I think they're going to get some wonky matchups here and as a higher seed, but I think Tyler Kolek is just the guy, the glue that holds them all together. But their weaknesses for Marquette is I think there's 3 glaring weaknesses, and as good as Tyler Kolek is, I don't think they have that that star power, that bucket getter. Tyler Kolek's a scorer, but he's not a bucket getter. There's a distinct difference. Defense is another weakness I have for Marquette, and Shaka Smart. Shaka hasn't made it out of the first round since 2013 with VCU. The defense is outside of the top 50 on KenPom. And when they play against these bigger teams, I mean, look at some of Marquette's losses: Mississippi State, Xavier, Purdue, UConn, Providence. They all have dynamic big men that they can exploit this Marquette team on. If you go on Bart Torvik, it has Marquette above Creighton at 16. Similar resumes, and it's either Final Four or bust. There's more bust than Final Four. I don't think this year's necessarily a bust for Marquette, but I'm not buying stock on the Final Four run either.
Michael, what are you seeing with Marquette?
If you're a Marquette fan, and if the team, hypothetically speaking, because I don't think this happens, but if they lose in the first round of the Big East tournament and then the first round of the NCAA tournament, and you say this season's a bust, you have lost your mind. You won the regular season title. That hasn't happened in so long, and your fan base, you pieces of you bringing that L. Come on, that's cold.
I loved that from the university account too. That's not even the athletics one.
My roommate even just randomly brought it up to me. He's like, Marquette gave you the L. I'm like, thanks, Jack. Thanks.
We got something for him. Meme Dog DeRosa is coming after him.
Yeah, we'll be ready. I hope they would lose in the Big East tournament, though, because I don't want to make fun of a Big East team losing in the NCAA tournament. I like that whole conference kumbaya BS. But if I'm Marquette, and there's like one thing I'm worried about, they're one of the worst rebounding teams in the country. They're 301st in total rebound rate out of 363 teams. If you play a team with like a legit big, like of the teams below them, no one's special. DePaul's down there, Notre Dame's down there, Wisconsin, not another great rebounding team. But like other than that, like every team they're going to find in the tournament, NCAA or Big East, is a better rebounding team than them. If you can just get on the glass and just attack them that way, I think that's another way you can beat them. Get those extra possessions, make them have to work, slow the game down a bit. If you can beat this Marquette team on the glass, I think that's the one worry I'd have.
Yeah. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, when we had Andre of Paint Touches on here, I guess what was that, a week ago now? We kind of hit on this, but yeah, against bigs they tend to struggle, right? Their losses in the non-con were against Toulouse Smith and Mississippi State, and then Edie and Purdue, and then Tyler Wall in Wisconsin, and then the teams they've struggled with in the Big East have had really good bigs, which that doesn't mean much because almost everyone has a good big in this league. But like Michael was saying, they're not a good rebounding team. And Tyler Kolek, not an awesome scorer. Shaka in the postseason, not awesome, even though he has a reputation still of being a great postseason coach. That's just not really been the case the last 10 years. But I hope they do well. I don't think that they have I think they have one of the lower floors, honestly, come March of the higher echelon Big East teams.
See, I kind of disagree there on them having a lower floor. And this is something actually I talked about last season, too. One of the reasons I like Marquette as a tournament team is because I think their style of play is so hard to prepare for on a short rest. If they win on Thursday or Friday of the NCAA tournament, they're going to go against a team that hasn't seen them all year long and is now going to have to prep to face that offense and the way it operates with basically one practice, maybe two practices, a walk around, whatever it is they're doing. And that's so difficult to me that I feel like it's a team, once they build a little bit of momentum, like if they win on the first round, they should get through the first weekend. If they win in the Sweet 16, they should get through to the Final Four, just because I think they're going to have some matchup advantages there. And that's where Shaka as a tournament coach, I think that's where you can see him do well. I agree with the rebounding that you guys brought up as a weakness for them. I'd also bring up inexperience. This is an incredibly young team, and it's an offense that we've seen be kind of streaky at some points. That Purdue game, the offense went ice cold at the end. And for as explosive and dynamic as Cam Jones is, he has that it factor, but this is going to be a totally new thing for him. And it's one of those games. They go out and they don't shoot the three ball particularly well, and they get bullied on the glass, and they can't put their style of play on the floor, then they could get beat by a team that's technically worse than them. That's the issue for Marquette. I buy into them. I think they absolutely have a Final Four ceiling. I think they can get there if they get the right matchups. The offense is just so dynamic, and it's so not reliant on 3-pointers. I think that insulates it a little bit. It's not one of these teams where they play in a gym they haven't played in before and they can't shoot the 3 ball because it's a new experience and the team's dead in the water. I think they can work with a little bit more on offense, which will help them out. That's why I think they have a high floor.
While we're talking about them real quick, what are the odds that this Marquette roster stays intact next year? Because it is very young.
Right?
Like almost all of their guys could come back next year.
I don't see. I mean, Omax Prosper, I think, is the only guy who could leave for the NBA, and I don't think he goes.
Cam Jones, maybe.
I think they're both maybe Prosper this year, but I think Cam Jones is a year away for sure. He's talented, very, very talented. Not trying to take anything away from him. I feel like he's a little bit away. Like that smaller combo guard, scoring guard mold isn't really successful in the NBA. So, holy crap, they could run this team back.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is that they get obviously like look at Creighton this year. Anything can happen when you run a team back and you have a lot of hype around it. Sometimes it just doesn't go as planned, but they should be able to run this back. Obviously, you want to capitalize on the opportunity you have this season, but you're playing with house money to a degree and that you can just do this again next year if you want to, assuming health and everything stays equal. I want to work down the standings here a little bit as we go through these teams. We got 2 second-place teams here. I'll take the Friars first. And, Michael, we'll come to you first on this. Can Ed Cooley cook up another Sweet 16 run, or do you think this is a team that could really struggle in a tournament environment?
I think like Sweet 16, it's really matchup dependent for Providence. Like they're looked at as like an 8 seed right now in the bracket matrix. If they're an 8, I don't know if I'm picking this Providence team to beat a Alabama. Though Alabama, if there's a one you want to play right now, it's Alabama. You don't know what's going on there. But like a Houston would just out tough them. And that's not something that happens to Ed Cooley teams, but that's Houston. That's what they do. And they do it. Kansas, I think, is just kryptonite. So I don't know. In terms of like Sweet 16, I would want to get out of that 8-9 matchup. But it's a very good Providence team. They don't do anything that like really like jumps off the page. Like they're excellent at this one thing. I feel like they're like kind of a generalist in a sense. Like they can shoot the ball well, but not great. Bryce Hopkins is a go-to scorer. He is someone you're going to have to game plan for. And on short notice, that is not a good time. But I don't know. I think Providence needs a little run to try to boost seeding to get to like hopefully that 7 line. I don't know if you're moving up 2 seeds at this point. Get to that 7 line, get one of those like vulnerable 2s, and go from there if you want to make a Sweet 16.
Chris, what do you think?
Yeah, Matt, I know you're going to disagree with me, but I liked the ceiling of last year's Providence team come tournament time a lot more than this one with Nate Watson, Al Durham. I just don't know if they have like that next level to, like Michael was saying, to beat a super high ranked 1 or 2 seed or even a 3 seed type of deal. We'll see. I like this Providence team. I don't think they'll get upset or, if they find themselves on a 7 line, I think they take care of the 10. But yeah, facing 2, man, I don't know. That's all
Tommy?
I got.
Yeah, kind of to echo what the both of them were saying. I mean, there's not really anything Providence does bad, but there's not anything Providence, I don't think, does great, except their coach. They have Ed Cooley. That is their biggest strength. He will have those guys ready to go, even though he may still be introducing himself to some of them in the huddle because it's a new team every damn year. Bart Torvik, little fun fact here for you, Matt. You know the similar resumes on Bart Torvik?
Mm-hmm.
This Providence team has a similar resume to Shaka Smart's 2013 VCU team.
Ooh, very interesting. The last time that I had pulled up the similar resumes tool for Providence, the 3 most similar were a team that went to the Final Four, a team that entirely missed the tournament, and a team that got upset in the round of 64. So
that sounds about right.
Yeah. And that's kind of how I feel about the Friars. Like, they're good at everything. I'm not fully confident in them away from home yet. I think that's kind of a concern here. I worry about the offense's dependence on officiating too. Like they like to get to the line, and that's one of those. If you get an officiating crew that's just not going to call things your way in the tournament, you can lose to anybody. And with an offense that's that dependent on it, they're going to be physical. I think they'll be competitive no matter what. I think I would go as far to say is, especially in a year where the top is as weak as it is this year, the Friars have a Final Four ceiling if they put it all together and they get the right matchups. And these guys are playing like they are. Jared Bynum getting hotter and the ability to shoot the ball on the outside, but they're probably going to be in an 8-9 or a 7-10 matchup in the first round, and they might not make it out of that. They're that variable. I think they're that matchup dependent this year, and they get a team they can out tough and the officiating lets them play that way, then they'll win. If they don't, then they can lose to anybody.
Yeah. If I'm looking at oh, you go first, Chris.
I was just going to say yes to echo Matt's thought. 6-8 overall, not at the dunk / whatever they call themselves now. So, yeah, not great.
I think it really depends on matchups if you're talking like Sweet 16, stuff like that. Like I'm looking at the 1-2s on the Matrix. The one I see now that could work out for them is Baylor. Baylor's an excellent team. They have 3 awesome guards, but you put Devin Carter on one of them, that's one guy gone. And then the next 2 have an off game. Baylor's offense, a lot of one-on-one stuff like that. That isn't working. I could see Providence out toughing that team. They're a different team with Chama Chachua back, but there are some matchups where I can look at it and say, okay, Providence can make this. Then it's like if they get Houston, it's like, I'm sorry, you're not. I don't know what the spread is, but I would take Houston at any number.
I got a front seat. Providence played Houston in a game at Mohegan Sun back maybe 5 years ago now, something like that, 4 or 5 years ago. And the way Houston out physical to Providence from the get-go, looked like the Friars never got off the bus in that one. It was just never really all that competitive, which is something you rarely see happen to head Cooley teams. And Kelvin Sampson could take it to another level there. So, yeah, very matchup dependent. I'd also bring up size for the Friars. Ed Croswell, undersized. Jared Bynum, undersized. They're undersized all the way through that lineup. And they're a really good, tough physical rebounding team. But if they get a team that has size and depth, then, or even just big centers, like that could become an issue, like we just saw against UConn earlier this week.
Yeah, to echo what Chris said here, I mean, Providence is 6-6 away, 0-2 in neutral site games. The defense is a little shaky, 75th ranked defense on Ken Palm, 78th on defending the 3, which I feel like always looms large in March. I'm not sure if I buy a Final Four ceiling. I mean, it's so matchup dependent. I guess I could, depending on matchups, but yeah, I'm less confident in Providence than I am at the other 3 or 4 teams at the top of the conference this year.
Yeah. And I think it's tough because you don't necessarily know what Providence team you're getting. Like, it's the road games they've lost. A couple of them came back in the non-conference when I don't think this team was put together yet and didn't have any chemistry. Some of them came when Jared Bynum was out. And the only 2 since then are the UConn and St. John's ones, which are games where they just didn't look competitive at all. And it's hard to know what you take away from that sample size. So I'm curious to see what Providence looks like over the next 2 weeks and what this team looks like at the Big East tournament, because I think it's a team that can win the Big East tournament if they play the right basketball. It's a team that has beaten UConn, has beaten Marquette. The only team they haven't beaten in the Big East this year is Xavier. They get them at home on Wednesday. They can beat every team. Ed Cooley's done it before. They can win the Big East tournament. If they do it, I think we'll have a lot more confidence in what they can do away from home. I want to talk about the other team here in second place. Xavier, a team has been banged up, struggled down the stretch a little bit here. Sean Miller's first year. Xavier should get back to the tournament here for the first time in a while, but can they make any noise? Tommy, what's your read on what they got going on in Cincinnati?
I mean, Xavier's offense is awesome. Like, Sule Boom, so good. So is Colby Jones, Kunkel, Zach and Jack. But, I mean, I guess that's where it comes, is the Fremantle X factor. Xavier's, I mean, their strength is their offense. Their weakness is their defense, really. I mean, 76th ranked defense in Ken Palm, 7th worst in the conference. I mean, for reference, that's just 4/10 of defensive efficiency better than Butler. But, I mean, when Paul Fritchner was on here, he said Fremantle is just starting practice this week. We don't know when he comes back, if he's going to be 100%. He's already not exactly a lockdown defender. But, I mean, Sean Miller isn't Travis Steele, so, I mean, that's got to count for something. They're top 10 in effective field goal percentage, top 5 in three-point percentage on KenPom. They take good shots. They make a lot of them. Xavier, I think, highest ceiling, lowest floor out of the top teams.
Yeah.
Do you agree, Chris?
Agreed with me. With the highest ceiling, lowest floor. This team isn't that good on defense. They're just not. They have 5 guys or 4 guys that shoot 40% or above from 3, and that's awesome. Like, that's unbelievable. But NCAA tournament is different, right? There's one more like media timeouts, I think, and the pace of play tends to go down in these type of games. Things are called a little bit more. Xavier, I think, relies on their style of play to win out quite a bit. And if that style of play and their pace isn't as much of a factor in March Madness, I don't know. In a super low possession game, if they find themselves in one, I don't necessarily love their chances just because they don't get a whole bunch of stops in a row. But yeah, their ceiling is mega high.
It's funny. He mentioned low possession games. That was actually the thing I was going to prep for. Xavier in their I believe it's their 7 slowest games of the season is 3 and 4. The losses to Marquette, to Creighton, to Duke, and then to Villanova. And then their wins are over Montana, who's Montana, Seton Hall, and Providence. But like in those slow paced games, those games where you have to grind it out, they're not a great defensive team. So I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. And if they're not hitting shots, they can lose to just about anybody. They've lost to Butler and they've lost to DePaul this season. If some mid-major's hitting shots, you get like a Youngstown State who has like a top 5 offense. You get just some other mid-major who's hot and on a run. And Xavier just has one of those games where they just, I don't know who is in the other room, but they're slamming everything as loud as possible. And it's been, I made a couple faces and I'm like, I can hide it. And okay, it's got to me. They got to me. Well played, roommate. But I'm going to battle through this adversity. I'm going to battle through. Xavier reminds me a lot of like that Iowa team last year or that Auburn team from a couple years ago where they can go on a run like that Iowa team. They won their conference tournament. Then they got beat by Richmond in the next game. Like they were perfect in the Big Ten tournament. Then they make the NCAA tournament, play a Richmond team, and just get beat. Or that Auburn team was one play away from losing to New Mexico State in the 5-12, and then they end up making the Final Four. And like they cruise through like UNC, Kentucky, you all had really good teams that year. There's such a, as everyone said, the floor is as low as it gets, and the ceiling is about as high as it gets. So
yeah,
Xavier is an enigma, and I don't know how we're gonna try to figure him out come any of these tournaments. They could do anything, and it wouldn't surprise me.
And I almost like Xavier more against like good opponents because then I think you get a more normal game, and they're going to get up for it. And it's going to be high intensity, and I think they match that moment. I think they're the team where you're probably the most worried. If they're in a 4-13 and they got a pesky 13 seed, you're the most worried. Especially, I had said this on previous episodes. If they get the 12-10 Eastern afternoon start against a 13 seed in what's going to be an empty gym somewhere, where the only people that show up are probably rooting for the 13 seed, if the momentum starts to go that way because they want the upset, that's really tough for Xavier with the way they play and their reliance on shooting. I will say they pass very well. For as good as they are at shooting the 3, they don't take the 3 that much. So I just, outside of the very end of that UConn game, we have not seen their defense win them a game once this season. And it's hard for me to pick a team to go pretty deep when there's one entire aspect you can't rely on. To an extent, I think that also applies to Providence and to Marquette when you're analyzing them. That's why the floor is in all 3 of them, I think, are first-round exits. And the ceilings in all 3 of them are probably Final Four runs. All teams with offenses that can be elite and defenses that can absolutely lose them a game. So we'll see what happens with those 3. The next team up, not a team I'm really concerned about the defense for. It's Creighton. Chris, I know we talked about this a little bit before, and you kind of outlined this, but now that we're doing it in this format, real quick, go through Creighton. Floor, ceiling, how do they get there?
I think the ceiling is still as high as it ever was for Creighton. A lot of people, like if you look at the metrics of like Ken Pom metrics of previous national champions in the last 10 years or so, Creighton matches that mold. They very much have the build to do that sort of thing. And I certainly think they could make a Final Four. The defense, right, like I was mentioning, 70 points or lower, Creighton wins essentially every single time. So it starts with the defensive end. On offense, they beat you so many ways, right? When Shireman's hot, or Trey Alexander's hot, or Nemhard's hot, or Kalkbrenner's dominating down low, or Kaluma is having one of his 10 to 12 really good games of the year, right? There's just so many ways that this team can beat you that it makes it really hard to defend. I would go as far as to say Creighton is probably maybe the toughest team to game plan for in the Big East come March Madness, just because there's so many people. But yeah, this team, the ceiling just about as high as Xavier, and I think the floor is significantly higher as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could agree much more. I mean, Creighton's top 30 in offensive efficiency, top 15 in defensive efficiency. Kalkbrenner's a nightmare. Nemhard and Baylor Shireman, they can catch fire. Like you said, Kaluma does it all. I mean, there's no holes on their starting five. I think, personally, they have a top 5 starting 5 in the country. The problem is their depth. They're 351st out of 363 in the country on bench minutes. I mean, coming off the bench, you got Frederick King, Frankie Farabello, and Mason Miller. I mean, Sharif Mitchell's okay. He's a decent 3-and-D guy.
Defensive Player of the Year, Sharif Mitchell, Tommy.
Apologies.
Yeah, no, you're right, though. Like we saw in that Providence game, if Creighton finds itself in a muck-it-up overtime game, do not love it because all the starters play 38 minutes a game.
Yeah, I think that burns them more in like the Big East tournament setting where it's 3 games in 3 days at that point versus in the NCAA tournament, you have a day off. You can just rest a little bit. In a Big East tournament setting, Creighton was the team I was probably going to back in the Big East tournament. A little worried about that and a little worried about this run they're on now. But in the NCAA tournament, I mean, this is a team that's smart. I believe they're the fewest or second fewest fouls in the country. They can beat you in many different ways. They defend well. They're a very smart team. They're not going to take too many risks. They don't like force a ton of turnovers, but they're also not going to turn the ball over a ton. They're going to play their game regardless. And if they're not fouling, they're not giving the other team an edge, a way to beat them. I feel like they're pretty safe in getting out of that first round unless you find a team that's like just shooting the lights out. And that can happen on anyone. But I feel like Creighton, as you said, pretty high floor and a decently high ceiling. I feel like if there's one team in the Big East that breaks through in the tournament, that isn't Marquette, who's fully capable of going on a Final Four run. I feel like it's Creighton.
I feel like, and this might be controversial, the ceiling might be like Elite 8 for Creighton just because the depth concerns me. And I think this is one of those situations like we saw at points in the non-conference, especially in Maui. I feel like it's one of those teams where any team that's worse than them, like Creighton should beat. I'm not really worried about Creighton getting out of the first round of the tournament. I think they're the team with the highest floor in that regard. They should win at least one game. But if they're playing on short rest, don't love it. And if they're playing, like they're going to play some teams that are probably as talented as they are, with a couple other guys who can come off the bench. And that's one of those situations where, like we saw in Maui, I could see this team losing the game by 2, 3, 5 points, or the game at Texas. They're going to be competitive. They're going to be physical. They're going to be tough. They're going to look like a Final Four contender, and they're going to end up losing a game to a team that is just slightly better than them. I'm not sure if they have that edge to get them over the top in that scenario.
Yeah, that's certainly fair. And like you said, with 6, if you're playing 6 games, just saying they make it all the way, the odds of somebody getting in foul trouble probably pretty high, right? And Creighton is certainly not very equipped to handle that.
Yeah, and they haven't really gotten foul in trouble much this year. They're one of the best teams out there at not getting in it. But again, it's the NCAA tournament where weird stuff happens, especially with officiating. And I feel like this is where the outliers happen. This is where that one thing that hasn't happened all season suddenly comes back to bite you, the one thing you were worried about. So we'll see if that's the case with Creighton. They have the talent, I think, to go to the Final Four, but I don't know if they have the depth to actually make that happen. Well, we're talking about talent. One more team that should be a lock here, UConn. We've seen how good they can be. We've seen how bad they can be. Michael, what's your read? Do you think this team makes a run?
I think you've covered it. What version of UConn are we getting? Are we getting the version of UConn that was the best team in the country in the first 13-ish games? They were by far the best team in the country. Or are we getting the team that went on that slump and they couldn't defend or offense? They couldn't either. So it's just a matter of which UConn team are we getting? And I feel like they had that like February, January, whatever slump. And it's like, all right, but if you're peaking now, which granted, I feel like they already peaked in November, but like if you're getting back to like that sort of level, like this team could win the Big East tournament. That's not past them. They could make a Sweet 16, give a 1 seed or something a run for their money, maybe even beat them. It's just a matter of what version of UConn are we getting. I'm a little worried. I don't know. I don't know if they have like that it factor, just hit that level they were hitting early in the season, but like they're there. They are a team that wouldn't surprise me if they made a run, but I'm not going to pick them to go past like a Sweet 16 but they could win the Big East tournament. There's a chance they're my Jerome pick.
Ooh, very interesting.
Real quick.
Tommy, do you? Oh yeah,
Sorry to interrupt, but Michael, Jerome pick. You picked Montana State. Give me 10 seconds why you wouldn't pick Eastern Washington to win when they lost one game all year.
I don't know. I don't know. Just Eastern Washington feels like their run is a little fluky. Like they've just shot the lights out of the ball. And I don't know if I can expect them to do that 3 games, 3 days. They play Montana State again tonight. I like Danny Sprinkle as a coach. I don't know. I just wanted to pick where not everyone was picking the same Eastern Washington. Like everyone's probably going to pick Eastern Washington. It's like, well, I think they're vulnerable. I believe Montana State's higher in Ken Pom too. So there's
respect.
Yeah.
Respect. Go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to throw it to Tommy there for the UConn opinion. Do you agree with Michael?
I have UConn ceiling a little bit higher. I mean, they're top 25 in both offensive and defensive efficiency, but I mean, I completely agree when he's talking about, I mean, what UConn team are we going to get? And as we all know, Hurley is a wild card in March. He hasn't had much postseason success in UConn, especially in the Big East. And any given night, the Huskies can go like cold, like more so than other teams. They have a 5-5 away record. They're pretty good at neutral site games. As awesome as Hawkins is, they're a little shaky in their guard play, but Klingon and Sanogo are going to be a load for any team to game plan for on short notice. Yeah, I mean, UConn's balance, I mean, they don't have many holes. Their ceiling is really high, but I think their floor is also pretty high.
Yeah,
Chris?
I'll go ahead and go off of that. Per Evan Maya, UConn has 3 of the top 5 defenders in the league. They also have the 2 top scorers in the league, points per game wise, in Hawkins and Sanogo. If Hawkins gets cold, I don't know. Who's going to shoot the ball? Is Andre Jackson going to make 3 threes? No. I don't know. If you play a team with a pretty stout interior defense to keep Sanogo and Klingon at bay, I could see something maybe where UConn trips up. But this team's really, really good. Yeah, Hurley wild card in March, but this team rocks, and I like the last. They've kind of righted their wrongs. The Providence game surprised me. This last Providence game, getting back on the right foot. Yeah, I like UConn a lot. The one caveat I will say, Caravan's not very good at defense. Right? If you have a good power forward that can just kind of take it at him, we have seen that has been problems for UConn in the past.
Well, I think that's what made that game so interesting, is that was the best defensive game I think Alex Caravan has played all season. If you get that version of him, I think UConn can win a national championship. They're that good. The issue is they can also lose in the first round. It's hard to trust this team given what we've seen the past 2 seasons with them getting upset right away. And that's why, I mean, that probably lowest floor, highest ceiling here with UConn. They're ridiculously talented, but we've seen them have issues with turnovers on offense. We've seen them have issues with fouls on defense. If you go up against a guard pairing that can give Tristan Newton issues on defense, I'm worried about them. If they get into a type of game where they're getting called for a ton of fouls, I'm worried about them. If those things click, then I think this team can beat any team in the country, can win a national championship. Realistically, I think they're more of an Elite 8 Final 4 type team. That's kind of their more realistic ceiling, but they can beat anybody, as we saw in the non-conference. So we'll see what happens. And this goes for the Big East tournament too. There's going to be a lot of UConn fans there for that, and they're going to be playing out of that 5 seed in all likelihood. I wouldn't shock me if they end up being favored in every game they play at MSG. So we'll see what ends up happening with them. I threw one more team in here for this. Villanova. We don't even know if they're going to make the tournament, so we'll go through this a little bit faster. But if they do, how far do we actually think they can go? And if they go that far, why are they getting there? Tommy, you're the Nova guy here, so we'll start with you.
I mean, if they make the tournament, they're going to make some noise. They are not going to be a one and done. They're going to be a high seed, and they're going to be a team that a 1, 2, 3 seed is going to shit their pants, saying, "Oh, geez, we have full strength Villanova in the second round." If Villanova makes a tournament, it's going to start with their defense, adding Justin Moore, Jordan Longino back. I know we're running short on time. If Villanova makes a tournament, they're going to make some noise. I don't think that they've had enough time to all play together. to make like a Elite Eight Final Four run, but I think winning a game or two is within the realm of possibility.
Chris?
When Villanova makes the tournament, they will make the Sweet 16. Yeah. This team's awesome. Come on. Justin Moore, the team we saw against Creighton with Moore and Daniels being able to post up, Dixon hitting shots, and also being able to make things happen in the lane. This team rocks. Come on. And I didn't even mention Whitmore, who might be the most talented player in the conference. Yeah, give me Villanova in the Sweet 16.
Michael?
The thing I'm worried about is Justin Moore's an excellent player. They have excellent players. I don't know if they have like a true point guard, though. And I feel like in March, guards are what win you games. Like if you have like a true point guard and like game on the line, I need a guy who can control the pace. I need a guy who can control this possession, this, that, whatever. I don't know if Justin Moore is that guy, especially just coming off of an injury. That's a lot of pressure to put on him. But Nova is a team that can make a run. Like if they get to the NCAA tournament, I feel sorry for whatever team they have to play in the first round. It's like you're going to be an underdog after your awesome season. You are an underdog to Villanova, and you're probably going to lose. It's like,
yeah. I like what I've seen from Villanova's defense lately. I think they've held 6 of their last 7 opponents to under 70 points. I believe I have that correct. The only exception in there was the Friars last Saturday up in Providence. Other than that, they've been locking down opponents. I think the guards have looked really good defensively, and that's the reason why I agree Sweet 16 ceiling. I know we're going to get out of here in a sec, so let's really fast go through our picks for Tuesday, Wednesday. I know that we all have our picks out there, but we'll go through very fast. First game of the slate, Marquette at Butler, 6:30 on FS1. Golden Eagles can clinch first place in the Big East, standalone with a win here. Tommy, do they do it?
Marquette's the best team in the conference. Butler's the worst team in the conference. Give me the Golden Eagles in a blowout.
Worst team in the conference? Are you fucking kidding me? What the fuck was that? What the fuck? No. Georgetown exists. I was literally setting up a Patrick Ewing joke to knock your Wildcats out of the tournament, and you dropped that shit? What the fuck? No, worst team in the conference? No, let's not forget, by the way. Hold on a second. I have all of those DMs you sent me during the Villanova Butler game in Hinkle when Butler won, and Butler was the much better team in the first half. Like, let's not forget that still happened.
They won the game. Yeah.
It's the same Villanova team. All right?
It is not the same Villanova team that won it. You're delusional.
You're delusional. You were correct. You got me angered. And I made a mistake. I apologize for that mistake. I mean, ridiculous. Worst team in the conference, come off of it. Live from historic Hinkle Fieldhouse. I mean, senior night. What could go wrong? Who are the seniors on this team? Who's leaving? No one knows. No one has any idea. No one knows what's going on. Who's getting celebrated? We don't know. But all we know is Butler's winning this game. No, they're not. This is Marquette. Down spot for Marquette, though. I think the spread's going to be like 8. It's like I could see Marquette just kind of walking through this game, and they'll probably still win, but low spot. But worst team in the conference. That's a dog shit take. Oh, my God. What an awful, awful take. Holy shit. Insane.
Chris.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. Marquette rocks. Butler does not rock. Matt, I don't know how you came up with your pick. Did you just truly draw 2 names out of a hat and just see what happens?
So I picked Butler for this one. My answer is this. I looked at the second half that Marquette just played against DePaul. I looked at the fact that when they played Xavier last week, obviously they won, but that was an incredibly close game against a shorthanded Xavier team. The last time Marquette played Butler was at home on National Marquette Day in their big one. And Butler had an opportunity to make a couple shots at the end to make that a 1-possession game in the final minutes. And they didn't make them because Butler has struggled this year. But the defense did something. That defense slowed down Marquette's offense. We've seen weird stuff happen in Hinkle Fieldhouse. So I wanted to be a little bit different. I don't feel great about this pick, but we're going. Butler is going to lose to Georgetown and beat Marquette on the same floor in the span of 2 weeks. I'm calling it.
Unless Jeff Anderson's behind the whistle, just giving Butler calls like he did in the Xavier game. Thanks, Jeff, by the way. You're the best. Butler doesn't win in the clutch. I don't know how they won that. They got that St. John's game because Jalen Thomas barely touched the ball after St. John's ran some of the worst plays at it. They put Curbelo back in the game with Posh. No, they took AJ Store out. What are you doing, Mike Anderson, you stooge? They lost to Georgetown in the clutch. Georgetown tried to give away that game. And Xavier, they should have lost that game. Jack Nungy pulls to Chris Webber, and no one talks about that because Butler messed up.
Yeah, that got lost in the rest of the chaos. Yeah. Well, it's I don't, like I said, I don't feel great about this.
Too late. Jaden Taylor says, always foul up too late.
That's what they say. It works. It works. 100% success rate.
1-1. It's
Yeah. We got another game Tuesday night, 8:30 Eastern in Newark, New Jersey. Fox Sports 1. Villanova visits Seton Hall with a chance to sweep the Pirates. Villanova trying to stay hot. Michael, do they do it?
I'm rooting for Seton Hall after what Tommy said. I will be rooting, sitting on my couch over there, rooting my ass off for Seton Hall to win this game. I hope they do. So I don't think they do. They look dead last game, and if Kadara Richmond doesn't play, they're dead. But I'm just going to say Seton Hall because I hope they win this game, and Tommy doesn't get his at-large or his tournament just because he slandered my Bulldogs, and he doesn't deserve happiness because of that.
Chris?
Yeah, Seton Hall, after the last 2 losses, I don't think they're super motivated anymore. And Villanova has a lot more to play for, in my opinion. They've looked a lot better as of late than Seton Hall. Give me the Wildcats on the road.
Tommy?
Cats.
Yeah, I got the Cats in this one too. I think it should be a good one. I think it'll be close, but I think Villanova's the better team here, and I'm not sure home court has mattered that much to Seton Hall this season. That's the Tuesday night slate. We'll move on to Wednesday night. Wednesday night starts with our game of the week, Xavier at Providence. I wrote about this today in my piece. I don't know how much you guys read of that, but the history of these two teams, this is the 4th year in a row now that Xavier has visited Providence in the last 2 weeks of the season with huge stakes. They lost each of the last 3 of those meetings. Zach Fremantle was there for all of that. I don't know if he'll play in this one. It doesn't sound like he will. This has been a place of heartbreak for Xavier. Tommy, do they change their fortunes in this one?
Finish the sentence for me, Matt. We're ranked teams.
Come to die.
Give me the Friars.
Michael?
If someone wants to go back on this, how many of our games of the week have been Wednesday at 6:30? I feel like it's every single one because guess who's in class from Wednesday from 6 to 8:30? It's this guy. So we're on Zoom this week, thankfully. So Professor Schultz might not know that the game will be on that TV right there while I'm trying to do my assignment.
He will after I send him this clip. But yeah,
Don't you dare. He actually apparently has looked at my Twitter page, so that was a dumb thing to say on my side, so I shouldn't have done that. That was stupid, and that's going to get back somehow. So yeah, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, Providence.
Chris?
Providence has won 1 game of that top echelon of Big East teams. Those top 5 have won 1 game against those teams since January 4th. Give me Xavier. And the 1 game they did win was against Creighton in double overtime. That was, I don't know. Say what you will about that game, but give me Xavier. I think they're the better team currently.
I picked Xavier in this one with the caveat that Fremantle plays. I'll stick with it for now. I think the issue for Providence is that it's a defense that has really had issues with communicating, and I don't think we've seen that get fixed this year. I think we've seen issues with that all season. I think Xavier's passing can cause issues with that. I think this is going to be a very highly motivated Xavier team. I think it'll be a good game. It'll come down to the wire. We'll probably get overtime the way the series has been between these teams. The last 2 games have gone to overtime. 2 of the previous 3 before that were decided on essentially buzzer beaters on the last shot. So probably come down to the wire again. I'll pick Xavier because I think they're due for the win in the series, but I don't feel great about it. After that, 7 Eastern, the last CBS sports game of the year for the Big East.
No.
DePaul at UConn. Chris, who are you picking in this one? I have a feeling I know where you're going.
UConn. Go ahead, Tommy.
UConn. Go ahead, Michael.
DePaul. No, I'm not. UConn. I hope Pete Gillen's on the call. UConn.
Yeah. R.I.P. Pete Gillen. Yeah, this should be an easy UConn win. I'm going with the Huskies in this one. And the last game we're previewing for this, potentially the last regular season game of the Patrick Ewing era. Georgetown visits Creighton. Michael, we got to come to you for this one. Does Ewing go out with a bang?
No. Lose by 30, 40, or 50. God, this is tough. 40. We'll go 40. We'll go in the middle.
Tommy, I see you go with 50.
Yeah, I'm going to go 50.
Chris?
Yeah, Creighton will win. I hope Primo has a good day, though. I like him.
Yeah, it's fun.
I wouldn't be shocked if this game's a little bit closer. When I say closer, I mean in like, it'll only be a 20-point win for Creighton relative. Georgetown has kind of kept things close with some teams. They're talented. I think it's a Wednesday night, late night Wednesday game, so maybe this game's a little bit closer, but I think Creighton still wins and covers. Yeah, that's going to do it on this one. Any final thoughts from anybody before we're done?
Worst team in the conference. You absolute piece of shit. I will look. Rick Pitino, the Rick Pitino sweepstakes is my number one focus, but don't make me will Villanova losing games to my number 2. Don't make me do it, Tommy.
All you had to do
nice, buddy.
All you had to do was sweep Georgetown. That's all you had to do.
Certain things are impossible, okay? You think Patrick Ewing isn't going to win one game last season? Come on.
Very possible.
He's got to win one. He's got to win one. There's just some magic power.
He already did against DePaul. That was their bingo. He's got to win a road game. He hadn't won a road game since, I don't know, like 800 days before that game. He needed his one, you know? It's charity. 14 years old the last time Patrick Ewing won a road game.
All right, I think that's going to do it for this one. We may have some tensions in the Road to the Garden Slack to solve after this one. We may have to pay for group therapy. So, hey, if you want to help us pay for group therapy for Tommy and Michael after this one, go to our store, buy some stuff, and use that SeatGeek code we used at the beginning. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. Hopefully you are watching on YouTube so you can see our faces for it. If you're not, go ahead, subscribe. We're going to be doing stuff the next couple of weeks here at the Big East tournament coming up. Thank you, Michael and Chris, for coming on. Tommy, always here. Thank you. I am Matt St. Jean, and we'll see you Thursday night. Thanks for listening.